in the distant future. A remarkably old cache of data that was believed to be irretrievably lost is curiously rediscovered in a pocket of archived data cores from previous revisions and updates of the main central server system. Hidden amongst this cache of data was a curious collection of audio recordings from an unrelated and even earlier period in history, wrapped in code that was uncrackable. Eventually, data scientists figured out a way to emulate the original recordings, device, operating systems in order to open and retrieve the audio files for playback. This is one of those files.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled brainwashing in order to bring you news. Breaking news. A special segment of the almost daily Zencast, focused on curious, quirky, and quixotic news items that you may have missed during the last 48-hour news cycle. Hosted by me, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.
This is News Breaking News. I am the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Setting aside the argument about which echo chamber media channel is most righteous and which is most corrupt, please join me in considering the message that Bernie Sanders is trying to communicate. He is a politician, so it's a 60-40 shot that he would really be able to do what he promises. But why don't we consider what he's got to say? Just for the experiment, the thought experiment of thinking, what if he really means it and would actually strive against the system to achieve the kinds of things he's talking about?
Plan, but as we all know, and I know that you don't like this part of the process, and many policy purists don't, but there's got to be a connection with the messenger as well. And it's got to be about raw persuasion. And let's be honest, this president's gotten pretty far on a set of ideas that weren't exactly novel other than building a wall. So let's go to a moment that will really separate the winner from the loser. You're on stage with the president, and he's looking at you and he's saying, this guy, Bernie Sanders, he's in the inside forever. He's hitting you with socialist every time you give any kind of answer. He's taking personal shots at you. He's bringing up your family, calling you crazy, Bernie. What does Bernie Sanders say on the stage? Because you can't ignore it.
No, you cannot ignore it. And I think the point to be made to Trump.
For the record, the strange, echoey, almost sound effect thing going on with Bernie Sanders' voice, that's just the way it sounded on television. I did not apply any kind of effect. I wanted it to be understood. I didn't want people to think that I'd done something weird. I believe it's because he was standing in a very large antechamber kind of space with a very echoey, an organically reverby kind of acoustic to it. And a Scout's honor, I didn't do it. I mean, I obviously can apply effects to things and often do for shits and giggles. But I swear to you, on that and in the rest of this recording with Mr. Sanders, it's not me. It's what it sounded like coming out of the TV speakers.
No, you cannot ignore it. And I think the point to be made to Trump is that, in fact, we have a society right now, in many respects, which is socialistic, in the sense that the federal government spends a lot of money helping certain kinds of people. The problem is we get billions of dollars in subsidies to the pharmaceutical industry, to the fossil fuel industry. In fact, Trump himself, in his real estate company, received massive amounts of subsidies and tax breaks. So what we say in response to the charge of socialism is you got socialism right now. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we have socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor. And I agree with that. So what I believe in is a socialism that works for the working families of this country. And Trump believes in a socialism for Wall Street, for the drug companies, and for the big money interests.
And at the end of the day, you know, your concern has to be, of course, look, you want the best ideas to win. But we also know that that's not always how it happens. You know, one of the most indicative metrics of who wins presidential elections over the last bunch of cycles has been the who do you want to have a beer with contest. Is that something that you think that you would be able to focus on personally? That if he's going to talk about me, I'm going to have to go toe-to-toe. And I'm going to have to win the messenger contest and not just the message.
Well, I think, yeah, the answer to that is yes. But I think something else, Chris, and that we have got to be honest with the American people in a way that most politicians and the media is not honest. So how does it happen that after 45 years, after all of the speeches and the legislation and the party platforms, how does it happen that the average worker today is no better off than he or she was 45 years ago? And then we have got to look at who really controls the economy and the political life of this country. This is something we don't do very often. I am prepared to do that and to tell the American people that Bernie Sanders alone as president cannot do all of the things that has to be done. That together, and the message of our campaign is us, not me, that we need millions of people to stand up to tell Wall Street we're going to end their greed and break up the large banks. We're going to take on the insurance companies, the drug companies, the fossil fuel industry, the military-industrial complex. No president alone can do that. And what makes my campaign different, I believe, than any other campaign is that I understand that at the end of the day, if we're going to improve life for the working people, for the children, for the elderly, we need a political revolution. Now, I know that not everybody agrees with me, and people get a little bit nervous about that. But if you are serious about bringing change, why are we the only major country not to guarantee health care to all? It is the power of the insurance companies and the drug companies. And if we're not prepared to take them on, then all of the speeches and all of the plans don't mean anything. All right, so I am prepared to take them on.
So you're going to have to ask for approval twice. If you make it to the general, well, that's what we're talking about right now.
Right.
Before, you got to make it out of the primary. Elizabeth Warren in current polling is catching up to you. You got her, Biden, and you are now at the top of the polls. Let's talk about each of them. What do you think the reason is that Elizabeth Warren is catching up to you in polls? Do you believe that people see her as the more electable version of Bernie Sanders?
Well, I think we are running against a lot of problems. I think that there are a certain number of people who would like to see a woman elected, and I understand that. There are people who would like to see somebody who is younger, and I understand that also. There are a lot of factors out there. Elizabeth Ike is a friend of mine. I think she's running a good campaign. But at the end of the day, Chris, whether it's Biden or Warren, Elizabeth Warren or anybody else, what I believe is that, in fact, I am the strongest candidate to defeat Donald Trump. And I think some of the polling shows that. I believe that our campaign can win in the states we have got to win, and that is Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida. And in all of those states, the polling has me at this point ahead, and I think that numbers will only grow in the months ahead.
True. The tweet you had today about this situation is you said the cat's out of the bag. Corporate wing of the Democratic Party is publicly anybody but Bernie. They know our progressive agenda of Medicare for all, breaking up big banks, taking on drug companies, and raising wages is the real threat to the billionaire class. The assertion aside, Elizabeth Warren can't be their poster child then, right? I mean, she's been going after corporate conglomerates in a big way for a long time.
That tweet was not about Elizabeth Warren at all. Not at all. Elizabeth is a friend of mine, and we're going to run, I hope, just simply issue-oriented campaigns. This was, though, a very strong statement about a group called Third Way. And you know that Third Way is the corporatist wing of the Democratic Party. And I am a little bit tired of hearing from these people, and this is not the first time that I've heard about it, and they say, we will support anybody except Bernie Sanders. So I don't mind taking on all of corporate America and Trump and the Republican Party, but I have a question for Third Way, and that is, if I win the Democratic nomination, I think we got a good shot at that, who are they going to support? Are they going to support Donald Trump, or are they going to support Bernie Sanders? Chris, one of the very first questions that I was asked when I got into this race, people said, Bernie, if you don't win, will you support another Democratic candidate? And I said, absolutely. I will do everything I can to defeat Donald Trump. And if that candidate turns out to be a lot more conservative than me, somebody like a Joe Biden or somebody else, I will knock my brains out to see that he or she is elected because I want to defeat Donald Trump. So I'm asking this corporate wing of the Democratic Party, a Wall Street funded group called Third Way, if I win the nomination, are you going to be there with me, or are you going to go over to Donald Trump?
We will reach out to them during the show, see if I can get you an answer in real time. It is a worthy question to be answered by them. Let me ask you one more quick thing. What happened with Biden? You had said Cory Booker's right. Joe Biden should apologize for saying something nice about segregationist types. He came back tonight. You heard what he said. That it's unfair to make him as anybody who has to apologize for his record on civil rights. He was just talking about the fact that he was able to work with them, not that he liked them. Do you think he still needs to apologize?
I do. Look, we all have to work with people with whom we have very different points of view. I do it every day. But I think to be singing the praises of people who were vicious segregationists is not something that anybody...
But he was talking about working with them. Is that the same thing as singing their praises?
I'm not so sure about that, but that's all.
Senator Sanders, I appreciate your candor, and I appreciate you talking raw politics with me. I know you like to get into the policies, but at the end of the day, you got to convince people you can beat the person whose job you want to take. So thank you very much for being on the show. You're always welcome here.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, be well, Senator Sanders. So what's fueling the rise of Elizabeth Warren?
Did they sound deranged or determined?
And that is the latest breaking news. We now return you to your regularly scheduled brainwashing. Thank you for listening.